Norman Goldman, Randy Rhodes, Sam Cedar, Ron Reagan, and David Postman.
Okay.
Hair. How's my hair? Is my hair okay?
Perfect, Norman.
Looking good,
You
Norman.
look at me and then you say,
Yeah, you
"How's
look
my
like
hair?"
Mitt Romney.
When we left, we were talking about the Democratic Party, and so we're going to get into the campaign a little more. And one of the things that runs through a lot of the questions, people want you guys to give advice to the Democrats who are running for office. They do. They want to hear from you about what people should do. So I want to talk about Mitt Romney a little bit, but I want to start.
They should do Mitt Romney because he needs to get done.
Yeah.
Really, somebody should do him. I'll do him.
So did everybody hear Tom's show the other day when he talked about the roots of Bain Capital? So,
No,
Tom, I hate to make you summarize this because I know it's huge, but if you can, give us a shot.
That's good.
It's very short, actually. In 1984, our country was funding death squads in Colombia, El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, and by coincidence that year, a company called Bain Consulting, which Mitt Romney did not own but worked for, decided that they were going to spin off a company called Bain Capital, which Mitt Romney would own 100% of if he could raise enough money to make it happen. And so he went down to Miami. He bragged, actually, in a speech he gave, that he made over a dozen trips to those 4 countries that I named, and also a lot of trips to Miami. In fact, he bragged about this before a Hispanic audience, that he had such good Hispanic connections, that there was, a number of families down there that were involved in the death squad business, or who were close to the military juntas, particularly in El Salvador, that were close to this. And one guy in particular who was given the job of cleaning up after the dirty interrogations in El Salvador. They would interrogate people, and then after they were interrogated, he had to clean them up. In fact, in his testimony, he said that the interrogations typically were torture and rape. He said, and he worked with an American advisor who was teaching them how to do it. And in his testimony, he talked about how one of the sessions that they did as an example, that the teachers came to El Salvador, presumably Americans, to teach them how to do this. They took a 13-year-old girl and a 17-year-old boy off the street and tortured them to death as part of this, training program. So anyhow, Romney ended up raising 40% of the money for Bain Capital not directly from people that we can say, yes, they were part of the death squads, but from the wealthy families who were part of the business and political infrastructure of those countries.
Who helped finance that?
Well, who at the very least,
Inseparable.
at the very least, did not know, knew what was going on, and at the most didn't just help finance it, may well have been directing.
I want to say something. Do you listen to RT Network? This is a great. I don't know if you know about it. You got Tom, you got Max Kaiser, this is great programming.
Yeah.
I just
this
have
radio station's more important.
well, no, it is. Don't get me wrong. But it all fits together. It all promotes itself together. And I just happened to be on the show the other night when Tom was telling this story, and I think I know what's going on, but I'd never heard this story. I mean, it's a remarkable source of
There's
information.
only been one story in the mainstream American media about this, and you can pretty easily Google it. A fellow writer for Salon did a short piece on it a couple of months ago, I guess, and it just went nowhere.
And another story from Salon that came out of the same thing was this story where you have facilities. Bain came in 1996, bought up a bunch of rehab facilities for drug rehab, troubled teenagers. And the idea was to go in and cut staff, cut care, cut training. So they understaffed, underfinanced, undertrained. People started dying. More lawsuits springing up just about every 3 or 4 months. Sexual predator cases. But why is that story important? It's important because we judge people by the company they keep. Okay, no pun intended. This is his company. You understand? This is he makes money from this company. And I think what we're so bad about doing as Democrats is going ahead and jumping out there and saying, look, let's tell the story. The story is, A, he knew about the lawsuits. He knew people had been sued for sexual predator activity within the facilities. He knew people were dying because they were understaffed and underfinanced. He knew they had gone in and did a leveraged buyout. You understand what a leveraged buyout is. It's where you draw, the investors take everything from the company, leave it with just barely enough to operate. But here you're talking about health care. Here you're talking about teenagers, troubled youth, that paying $40,000 a month to be a part of that organization. So what we fail to do, because this ties into where you're going, what do Democrats need to do? We need to tell these stories. And it can't just be Tom, it can't be just Tom, or these stories have to be told, and then you have to be able to relate them in a water cooler kind of way. But to tell them, you have to know about them. And so don't get too focused on one source.
So, Pap,
well, I'll tell you, I got to say, I think there's a better story about Mitt Romney, and that is just Bermuda, Switzerland, and the Cayman Islands.
Oh, exactly.
And I think the taxes. I mean, look, there's every reason to believe this guy paid either no taxes in 2009 or paid a fine because he was subject to a one-time, if you've been illegally evading taxes in Switzerland, during the tax year 2009, when the Obama administration came in, one of the things they did that in any way infringed upon the rights of banks to own everything everywhere was that they basically said, if you're an American citizen and you're at UBS, I think it was in Switzerland, we've got documents now. You've got a one-time chance. Pay a small fine. We don't put you in jail for tax evasion. This would have shown up on his 2009 tax forms. It wouldn't have shown up when he gave his forms to McCain. And that's probably the reason why he's holding back. And so, the stories, I have no doubt that he's been involved in that stuff. But the stories with Mitt Romney are very simple. Tax evader.
Yeah.
Tax avoider, nobody in America knows the difference. They both sound bad. And then he's willing to get rid of American jobs. That's like the number one YouTube ad.
No question. But
hang on one second. Because, Tom, you tell a very compelling story, and of course it's true. And Pat, you can add a headline to it. Mitt Romney was palling around with terrorists.
Yeah. No, Democrats are afraid to do that. My God. The good thing about Citizens United we talked about earlier, look, when I listen to Randy, for example, I hope you all do. She's what she does is she takes a complicated story and does it in a way that you can understand why the hell LIBOR was important. Okay? Why does that matter? Okay. So that's the thing, is I think the point Sam was trying to make. We're not very good at that. But hey, here's a silver lining. Citizens United, as much as we hate it, look what it's done. It's not, the Democrats can't take care of themselves. They're incapable of fighting back. They can't slash and burn, and in this environment you have to slash and burn. But what's happened? You've had people rise up, haven't you? You've had PACs that are setting the course of what Sam just said, aren't they? You have super PACs that are saying to the Democrats, you're so damn stupid, you can't deliver this message, so we'll deliver it for you. That's the silver lining to you as a citizen. That's the only silver lining I can see.
It may be that Mitt Romney hasn't broken any laws whatsoever as far as taxes goes, and that may be the more damning and dangerous thing for the Republicans than him actually being a lawbreaker.
No, because he might actually be prosecuted.
The thing is that he releases his taxes, and what it reveals is the way the American system is set up now. To advantage the rich, they've got the opportunity for the offshoring and all the loopholes and all of that. And Mitt Romney is implicitly and sometimes explicitly running on a ticket of more of this, more of what got me to where I am right now. Now, I think he's avoiding it for his own reason.
No, but your point is well taken. Your point is exactly well taken.
Like, whoa, we don't want this coming out.
But what you're doing is you're making an indictment of the Democrats. And on some level, because, look, we already know Mitt Romney paid 15%. Well, really 14.9.
13.9, I think.
13.9 is taxes. And
How about
President
zero?
Obama
Yeah.
has yet, and I hope he will, and I don't know that he will, but we remember all those Democrats, including Bill Clinton, came out, don't attack Bain Capital. It wasn't because they thought this isn't going to work politically, because it clearly is.
Hell, they've got in
No,
Ed
but
Rendell.
the point
and
is, this
Yeah.
is an indictment of the Democrats.
Yes,
and
it is.
it shows that we can talk about Democrats are bad at this and bad at that, but there is a significant percentage of the Democratic Party, I'm not convinced not also head by its president, that frankly don't want to make this systemic argument that needs
It's
to be
the
made.
paradigm
Well, they
issue.
can't.
And that's
they
that.
buy
well, that,
into
they
the
can't.
paradigm.
$18
They
trillion
choose not
and
to,
they haven't
and that's
prosecuted
problematic.
anybody. How do you make such
right.
an argument?
That's problematic.
It's not my job to defend the president, but his commercial last week with Mitt singing American.
It was brilliant.
Was great.
It was
Yes.
brilliant. You know why,
Yes.
though? You know
Yes.
why?
Yes.
Because the
Yes.
PACs are pushing the Democrats to do that. Don't believe for a second that Democrat leadership will do that without the PACs saying, damn it, take care of yourself.
Well-
pay attention.
Yeah.
Look,
They're doing that.
You guys are making
I-
very important points here.
I will concede that the president's rhetoric and his campaign is, I would love to see that he will be a president like he is a campaigner. That's what I'd like to see.
Yeah,
Let me ask
but
you a question from a listener right along these lines, if I may.
Yeah.
This is from-
you can't.
May-
Really, no, it's okay.
You're only the moderator.
You're only in charge.
I'm speaking for the people here.
I know.
This is from Mike and Kent, and I won't read the whole thing, but he says, I'm not persuaded that if Obama is reelected, he'll be any more successful in his second 4 years than he was in his first. I'm having a hard time finding a compelling reason to vote for Obama. He gives great speech. I'm not thrilled at the thought. Go ahead, persuade me otherwise. Who wants to persuade
Two
me?
words.
Yeah, Supreme
Two
Court.
words. Supreme Court. Supreme Court. Can I take a somewhat long...
That's the answer.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I won't. But
Ron-
the alternative being what? You know, well, gee, I don't think Obama's going to
Right.
do better than he did his first time, so I'm going to vote for Mitt Romney instead. What do you think's going to happen then?
I'll go a step further. I agree the Supreme Court, but I would say to that questioner, based upon what we know of President Obama's agenda in terms of the grand bargain, let's hope he's not successful on some of those things.
Yeah, you know,
because I don't want to see Social Security cut, and that we know from reporting. We know from reporting back in January 2009 that he entered office with this as agenda. We know from what he put on the table with Boehner that he's willing to cut Social Security. I'm willing to have some of his agenda be blocked. I hope we can count on the Republicans to continue their insanity about revenue to prevent a deal from being made.
Now, Mike and Kent, let me answer your question as best I can. There are two ways of looking at this. There is the comparative model, which I got incidentally from a caller named EC here in Seattle. I don't know if he's in the house. But EC taught me, and he's a caller listening on AM 1090. There's the comparative model, and then there's the exclusive model, which is if you just look at the Democratic Party the way we compare the Democratic Party, say, to Franklin Roosevelt, the current Democratic Party nationally just does not measure up. But if you compare the current Democratic Party to the current Republican Party, I mean, it's, you know, it's comparing Neville Chamberlain and Adolf Hitler. It's just, there's not a, the comparison is, but as I talk about this at length in my book, and Tom, you're 30 ahead of me, I'm catching up. And I do have some extra copies for sale here tonight if anybody's interested. But I talk about this at length in the book because, and I'm not just shilling for the book, we need to think like the Koch brothers. Now they have billions of dollars. They can afford to play the long game. But the Koch brothers have been playing their game since 1966 when William F. Buckley kicked them out of the Republican Party. So you need to understand, for this election right now, Barack Obama and as much of a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate as we can. Short term. Then there's a midterm thing, which is primary
We
the
always blow.
SOBs.
We
And
always
then there's the long term, which is build the Democratic Party the way it's supposed to be. But we can't just throw a temper tantrum and say that's we
But
don't have it all
the
now.
problem again,
Short-term,
the problem
medium-term,
again that
long-term.
you and Pap and Sam have made here is that a lot of the Democratic Party already thinks like the Koch brothers.
Yes, they do.
exactly like
Well,
the Koch brothers
You know,
do.
one big issue.
It's the paradigm.
One big issue.
again.
Why are we talking about a Democratic Party? What you are is a movement. Look, you're a movement. You're not a Democratic Party. You're not a party. What we have forgotten is movements are more powerful and more sustainable than a party. A party is very transient. A movement is not transient. A movement is where, when we see, for example, the women's rights part of that movement under attack, then unions rise up. Gender issues rise up. We stick together as a movement. We don't isolate them and say, well, that's okay because it's not us today. A movement doesn't count on somebody coming along and pulling a damn sword out of the stone. Abandon your hero worship. There is no more hero. There is no more hero. The movement is not a party. The movement does not allow leaders in a party to take control of the narrative for their personal gain, because they maybe can run for office or somebody's going to watch them on television more often. We have to be a true movement, and we have to get out of this stuff about talking about a party. Think of yourself as a movement. Leave here thinking of yourself as a movement. And tomorrow, when you see the elderly being attacked, understand they're part of your movement. When you see a woman's rights issue being attacked, they're part of your movement. A movement is what matters. Yes, right there. You've got it right there. You've got it right there. So that's my quick take. I'll be quiet. Another glass of wine, please.
This is from Peter in Seattle, who says that the progressives have been co-opted by the Democratic Party and President Obama in particular. The left seems to have been lulled into thinking that he'll be some kind of answer to their problems. The question there is why and what can be done about it in this campaign year?
Exactly what Mike said. The idea that you're waiting for something to happen or something. Listen, the reason why Obama hasn't been as progressive as we had hoped is because of the Congress. And I'm sorry, but in 2010, people were whining. You know how I feel about whining. People were whining and complaining about don't ask, don't tell, and Afghanistan, and why are we still in Iraq, and a whole host of things. And I kept saying, how fast do you want it to happen? How fast should it happen? Blah, blah, blah. They wanted him to come in like a freight train and just change 8 years and 12 years of Republican governance. It doesn't work like that. It couldn't happen like that. 2010, we sat home. They won with these right-wing extreme ideologues. And now the Democrats are sitting there, they have no control over a stick and rules committee, which means they have no control over what comes onto the floor. They have no control over the Judiciary Committee, which means every single thing in the Justice Department is just totally without oversight. I mean, the weirdest stuff is happening in courts all over the country. These guys know. You've got to go and vote. You've got to go and vote for Congress. You've got to vote for a senator. You have to get your friends to do it too. We have to be like hippies. Do you know what I mean? We have to be like hippies, like dirty little freaking hippies, and get under everybody's skin, and to the point where people go, why are they so happy?
And Tom and Randy are both right.
What do these people know that we don't know? Why are they so freaking happy? That's a movement.
Wait.
That's one that can work because people are very miserable right now. We could be like a bunch of Moonies if you want. I mean, just pie-eyed happy. The more miserable it gets, the happier we get.
But work
All right,
in
wait.
your
I
state,
gotta
work
say,
in your
I gotta
county,
I gotta
work
say
in
one
your
thing.
city.
I gotta say one thing, and I totally agree with the notion of what we need to do, and I totally accept the notion of that we don't want the Republicans in office, and so I've prefaced it that way. But the narrative that President Obama was handcuffed by Congress, at least when we talk about things like the mortgage crisis, the banks, when we talk about issues of the Department of Justice pursuing banksters. This was not a function of Congress. There is absolutely no way to blame Congress.
That's right.
Neil Borowski, the Inspector General of the TARP, is coming out with a book in 2 weeks that's going to talk more about this. President Obama was in a position to where Hank Paulson had basically offered to allow direct payments before he was even president. Before he was even president and handcuffed by the Congress, he was given the opportunity by Hank Paulson. All President Obama had to do, according to Barney Frank, is to tell Hank Paulson, we want bailouts to go directly to mortgage holders. They can pay the banks, instead of it going directly to the banks and hope that the banks do the right thing. And President Obama wouldn't do this. He's not a liberal. He's not a progressive. He is a Democrat. He's better than Mitt Romney by a long shot. The Supreme Court is essential to hold. But the fact of the matter is that we do ourselves a disservice to allow him to destroy the brand of leftism, progressivism, liberalism, because we don't want that associated with allowing the banks to take our money and screw us. That's what he has done. We can chew gum and walk at the same time.
All I'm going to say is really simple. FDR cut deals too. It's the art of the
This
deal.
is not cutting a deal.
That was cutting a
This
deal.
is giving away everything.
He wasn't even
What did he get in
president when
return?
that happened.
There's one.
You don't know.
If I can.
No,
just,
I do know.
If I can
Zero.
just maybe close this loop. What's his name? Who's the guy who was into sucking toes, prostitutes' toes?
Dick Morris.
Dick Morris.
Yes,
Dick Morris.
I'm sorry, I know that.
Yeah.
A Fox News analyst now.
I'm pretty sure.
And Tom DeLay. Is very
I may be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure that it was Dick Morris that I saw,
And Dick
I don't know,
Cheney.
6-8 months ago on Fox. There was a clip that went around the web about this, about a focus group that had been conducted, presumably by Frank Luntz, that the main thing that Republican under-the-radar operatives had to be doing was demoralizing Democrats. I get called, I know that there is a make money in your spare time industry. You all know this, right? People, if you can get into a radio show, you get $20. If you can post on a message board that is above 25,000 on an Alexa,
Yes.
and you can take down a Republican argument, and you can prove that it was you get paid for this. In the 2004 election, I had a guy who on TomHartman.com on our board who was so aggressive with this, and he was totally open about who he was. In fact, after the election, he went off and joined the Marine Corps and sent us pictures from Iraq. I mean, he was totally open. The one thing he wasn't open about until after the election was that he had been paid through this whole thing. In fact, he said that because he was no longer getting this money from the RNC or whoever it was, he had to join the Army. But he was being paid to post on our board and about a dozen other boards. And the message that they want those folks to be posting is,
demoralized.
aren't you guys unhappy with Obama?
See?
He hasn't been good enough.
Right.
He signed the NDAA. You should just stay home in November. It's important for us to have these conversations. It's important to have movement politics. It's important to hold people accountable and to kick ass. This is also an election year. We've got the Supreme Court is at stake here.
Look, well, that's why I preface my comments. And I will say, full disclosure, I am not paid by the IRNC.
Well,
I appreciate that. I think it's important, though. I mean, and that's fine. But I don't. I am not going to go on to message boards and tell people they shouldn't vote. I think the Supreme Court is crucial. I have a young child. I don't want her to go 50 years living under a 6-3 Supreme Court in this country. And so I will vote for Obama, put aside the notion of what I can do because I'm in a blue state. And I think people should go out and promote that. But I also think that when we're sitting in a room or when we're talking to fellow progressives, we should keep in mind that I get the idea that we need to have people energized, but
Sam,
the reality is the reality.
This is where we do movement politics.
I didn't sign the NDAA. He's not part of my movement.
Exactly.
He's not part of my
This is
movement.
why we do movement politics.
Did you want?
Mike, you got to.
Well, no, I think we're saying the same thing. All I'm trying to say is, look, we all know what's up with the idea to keep people from voting. We know that. We know that the demographics of the Republican Party is such that they understand that this is their last shot. Let's call it what it is. This is the last shot. You have even the southern states, you have the demographics changing to where that's their last hold. Okay, so what they're trying to do, this is it. They have to win, you understand. They have to win, because if they win, they have 4 more years to figure out how to keep you from voting the next time. Now, Democrats, is all I'm saying is, if we win, we have a luxury. And the luxury is to rethink how we look at politics. We have to win. Now, if we don't win, all this is a ridiculous conversation. I mean, we're wasting our time. Tom is right. We have to win. But if we win, we should go in like grown-ups and say, there are no heroes. There are no heroes. It's a terrible thing to say. We've grown up with heroes. There are no heroes. Hero worship does not preserve a movement. And we have to say to ourselves, what is it that we want to accomplish as a movement, not as a Democrat? So we got to win. But in the 4 years ahead of us, we have to reconsider this idea of our infatuation with the party. And our infatuation with
let me
the
follow
perfection
up.
of a president, exactly.
Let me follow up with what everybody is saying. I think we can all synthesize it, and that is we need to work local, take over our states, take over our counties, take over our local precincts, work local. It's important to talk about the presidential race, and it's important to talk about House and Senate on the national level, but it's also important to take over your state and take over your county. And this is where it has to happen. And it's less sexy, it doesn't get on the evening news, but it's much more important. Because if we're going to get a movement, if we're going to get the Democratic Party the way it's supposed to be, it's going to happen from the ground up. And that is why you have to work in Vermont, and you have to work in Wisconsin, and you have to work in Florida, you have to work in Washington State. Take over your state. Folks, it's easier to take over a state than it is a nation. Take over your state, and then we'll worry about the
tiny
nation.
steps.
He's right. He's absolutely right. That's why I keep on saying it's all local, it's all local, it's all local, it's all local, it's all local. I can't say that often enough. No one shows up to the precinct meeting. Well, why don't you hear about that? Because you don't have, I'm part of the problem, actually. You don't have local media anymore. You don't have a local talk station. You don't have a local TV station. And if you do, they're covering feel-good stories or the latest shooting at a mall or the weather, at the front and the back. I mean, there's like 18 minutes of news, right, that's local. I used to be a local broadcaster. I used to have a big effect on local politics. You think about where they fixed the election. It was in my county in 2000. I was a local broadcaster.
I've always blamed you for that, Randy.
I'm serious. I mean, I remember that day like yesterday. I remember calling Joe Lieberman, and I had his contact information because I was so low on the food chain at that point that I didn't get to talk to Joe Lieberman. I got to talk to Hadassah Lieberman. That was my big get. That was my big interview. So I had her cell phone number. So I called her up, and she was telling me how bad the porta potties were on the campaign trail. This was our interview the day before the election. So now I have the contact, and I went to vote, and I got on the air, and I said, oh, my God, I think I just voted for Pat Buchanan. And the phone lit up. And everybody went, oh, my God, the same thing happened to me. Da-da-da-da-da. Al Gore was second on the ballot, but you had to punch the third hole. Yeah. It was so messed up, and it was such a rig. So I called Lieberman, and I said to him, what are you going to do? And he goes, it'll be fine. And I knew.
Just the way I wanted it.
And then local radio went away, and if you didn't get national, you don't work anymore.
Don't worry, we got
there used to be
Bill Daley on the
10,000
case.
jobs like ours in this country. Now there's a couple of hundred. The reason is so that
You're
you feel it's all about the presidency. You feel it's all about Congress. You feel it's all about Washington. Then the conservatives swoop in and they go, Washington doesn't do anything for you, and they don't on purpose. They sit and say no to everything. And then they get you all angry, and you say, oh, well, there's nothing I can do. No, it all happens locally. The dirty little secret is you have no local leadership. You have no one in media, no one on the radio, nobody, read your newspapers, show up to the precinct meetings, take it over precinct by precinct by It seems small. When I was a local broadcaster there, oh, well, you're just local. You know what? Screw you. That's where it all happens. It's true. It's the dirty little secret. That's how the Tea Party became the Tea Party.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
If I can just punctuate Randy's point, there was a woman who met me at the gate over here during the break, who is advocating the National Criminal Justice Commission Act. She's become an activist because somebody in her family was given 71 years in prison for a nonviolent crime. And you know, this is like wrong. She showed up at the precinct committee meetings, got 10 elected officials to sign this thing. It's being written into the plank of the Washington State Democratic Party.
That's the answer.
This is the kind of stuff that happens.
It's grinding. Well, it involves you doing more than listening to my talk show or to Norm's talk. It actually requires that you do something, which is the hardest call to action there ever is. That, you know, that's why they're always saying, you know, call now, do this now, make the call now, make the call over and over and over again. Every piece of copy I ever read, the last thing says go to, don't forget go to, and put in my promo code. It's all called a call to action. And they need to keep drilling that. I need to keep drilling that into your head to get you to do something. Yeah. I'm here today to tell you that the thing you need to do is go to those precinct meetings. Get involved locally. Make sure everyone that goes with you is of like mind, whether you want your community to be moderately progressive or way progressive or just middle of the road. I don't care what your politics are. I'm not even a member of the Democratic Party, okay? I couldn't care less. I'm saying that you can change who you send to Congress, who the next county sends to Congress, and the county after that's by showing up at these precinct meetings. That is how the Tea Party took over the Republican Party.
Can I add a little side note to Pat? I'm sorry, I keep doing this to you, don't I?
We're doing this to
Pabst. Yeah, I know. We're kind of high-lowing him here. Just a little side note to Pabst's point about the desperation of the Republican Party now. It's not just political, I suspect.
Yes, it's not.
Their sponsors on Wall Street and in the big banks, I think, understand that the wheels are about to come off the bus here. That the economy is about to spin out of control and collapse, and they want their people in charge when the shit hits the fan, so they don't get stuck holding the bag. They can run away with the money to their, Cayman Island and Swiss,
have you read Chris Hedges' last book? It's brilliant. Chris Hedge says that the end of an empire results in insanity. It results in all of us going insane in one form or fashion. Hedges is of the theory that part of the insanity is that you have the most elite of that empire trying to gobble everything up. Imagine that you have 5 mice in a cage and you have one big rat going for this piece of cheese. Hedges is of the opinion that we're at the point now in a crumbling empire to where you have the most elite, the most have part of this empire that is now trying to gobble everything up. They're trying to gobble up natural resources because, see, they tell you everything is okay. They say, well, everything's all right. But they have their gated community in Switzerland. They have their exit plan. And think about this. In the past, we've thought about empire building where the United States went to South America or we'd go to Africa, we'd extract all the resources, we'd take everything and say, hell with you, we're going home. God has given us this divine right to do this. It's happening right here now. The multi-conglomerate corporations, the multinationals, have now set here on the United States, and they're sucking everything out of the United States. Chris Hedges says that the reason this is important for us to understand is this is when we have to fight back. Mm-hmm. This is the most important time in preserving an empire, is when this insanity takes place and we have the haves make have-nots the victims, and they try to extract everything because, hell, in their mind, the game's over. They're going to move to China. They're going to move to Russia. They're going to move to Switzerland. And they're going to leave you here to make sense of all it. Imagine a big locust coming here and sitting right here on Seattle. A locust. And the locust is trying to suck everything they can out of Seattle. And then the locust goes somewhere else. You need to read this book that Hedges wrote, because what it's saying is the time is now. The time is now. The time is now. Right now. To preserve an empire.
the extraction has already happened, okay? People know we did all the right things. We played by the rules. We paid our mortgage. We put into our 401k. We paid into our pension fund. Now they're trying to say things like, if you paid into your pension fund or you paid into your 401k and your money disappeared, it's your fault.
Right.
You're the leech. You're the locust. You're the bloodsucker. You're the drain on the system. They're making it your fault. And truly, the plan is a very simple one. The plan is that we are no longer consumers, and that was our value to the multinationals. We were the consumers of the world.
Exactly.
Well, we can't consume another thing because we're so in debt we can't borrow another nickel. Therefore, our value as consumers is done in their twisted mind. So the new consumers are the
Yes.
billion people in India, the
Yes.
billion people in the new middle class in China. And you are now the third world labor force. You are
Yes.
now the wage slaves. They're swapping positions.
It's hard to come to terms
And
with
we have got to stop it. Let's stop it and just say no.
I have a question.
No questions. Are
you still here?
I'm sorry.
And your name again is?
We had a bet up here before we came in. How long can we take him away from his questions? You know.
I was thinking when we started the second half, I should have just started with, well, we only have time for one question. This is from Ignis in Greenwood, and I think it gets to a lot of what we're talking about, because obviously we're talking to people here today who agree with largely what you're talking about. And there's been books written about this. It's worth studying. Why do so many Americans vote against their own economic interests? They put gun rights before health care, religion before jobs, and false patriotism before freedom. So you can talk to folks like everybody in this
Because
room.
when people are scared, when people are frustrated, and when people are confused, and when people are in shock, strong and wrong feels okay. Okay? The answers to the problems are a little complicated, they're a little detailed, they take a little thought, critical thinking. You need a leader, you need leadership within your own community, within your own family. Everyone knows this. But when people are frustrated and frightened, anyone who steps up to the microphone and says, they're to blame for your problem, and I have the answer, and this is strong and wrong. Okay, well, at least somebody stepped up to the microphone. So in the absence of real leadership, people will listen to any bullshit.
Eric
And
Fromm.
I think
Eric Fromm.
I think part of
Escape
it,
from freedom.
I don't think it's necessarily so obvious to everyone. Well, first off, we don't say this about rich people who vote for Democrats who are ostensibly going to raise their taxes, right? I mean, that's what we ask of them. And that's not in their economic interest, so that's not a question we put to rich people. Secondly, I'm not so sure that they have the opportunity, frankly, to even see that it's that explicit. You know, to a large extent, there has been a diminishment of people ostensibly representing the democratic ideals who have been pursuing that agenda. And so it's not like it's so obvious. And part of it is, problematic, is that we don't have messaging on the top or a belief system with those two choices, that there's an obvious choice in a party who, if I vote for them, it is going to be in my best interest as someone who works for a living, let's say.
Then there's always a they for the Republican Party. There's always a they
Right.
out there that can be blamed. The immigrants, Mexicans coming over the border,
The
You
gays,
people.
gay people, elites.
Right.
Immigration is perfect.
Right.
Since 2005, there's been no net gain in immigration in the United States.
Right.
Many
Zero.
people's left have come.
And
There are no
every
more
day
immigrants
I
now in
drive
the United
home-
States than there were years ago.
And every day I drive home and I hear thousands and thousands of hours of conservatives screaming about Obama and open borders.
Open borders. No. He's actually kicked more people out. He's enforced the border more,
400,000
twice as
to
many
the point
people on
where-
the border, guarding
That's
the
right.
border. And there are no more people here, immigrants, than there were in 2005.
It's also,
and yet there's
it's
this
also
whole
post.
kerfuffle.
Strong and
We're
wrong.
living in a post-truth political era,
absolutely.
where truth is
Mitt Romney.
not a defense.
The whole
anymore.
last week with Mitt Romney, with his business about, well, you heard what Obama said. If you build a small business, you didn't do that.
Right.
Well, everybody, and then he goes on to make the point that Obama actually made, which was that if you own a small business, you don't do it alone. If you own a big business, none of us do anything alone.
Right.
There's the rule of law, for
I do
instance.
something
Somebody
alone.
builds roads. All this stuff. That's the point he was making. That's the point Romney made, but cherry picks the sentence and lies. And the media says, well, he's doing this thing, but they don't use the word lie.
Remember the first ad that Romney had on? The very first ad he had was Obama quoting John McCain.
Right.
Saying, the McCain campaign was saying, if we, the McCain campaign, talk about the economy, we will lose.
Right.
They clipped it and had Obama saying, if we talk about the economy, we will lose. Look, this is
so why isn't the headline on that Romney or whoever lies about what Obama is saying?
He gave a speech the other day based on this false premise that Obama said you didn't build your own business, which was totally bullcrap.
We all know it, and that's the point.
Nobody paid attention to that speech, and that was to the media's credit. Gotta say, that was the first time I ever saw them go, you know what, screw him. That man is lying, and we're not going to cover that speech. And they didn't.
Yeah,
that speech came and went, and nobody
But they
saw
didn't
her.
say he's lying.
Right.
I did hear lying. I heard
Well,
lying.
Well, of course not,
Maybe
because
on
Romney
radio.
is a
Because they're getting the
horrible,
money.
Brian
horrible,
Williams.
Yeah, they make a lot
horrible
of money.
candidate. And the news media will make this a competition for as long as they can. And Romney is just a horrible, horrible candidate.
Ever notice when a Republican or even a Democrat to some, because it goes both ways, but let's say Mitt Romney has a really bad couple of weeks, by the third week, the media is looking for something to pick on in Obama and looking for some way to revive Mitt Romney because they want the horse race, because if it's not, if they declare right now, this guy's a sack of potatoes and nobody ought to vote for him, and let's just go with Obama, then, the ratings go because nobody's paying attention
to the
anymore.
ratings. It's not just the ratings, then the ad buys.
Well, of course.
We're talking millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars from super PACs and from the campaigns going on the television. These TV people, no offense, these TV people have No, I'm not talking about talent.
God
but
forbid.
the management.
I'm only a partial.
That's why I can't be on the TV, because I will say this. They have a vested, literally a moneyed interest in it being 45 to 45. That's why every day the polls are close. There are days when one breaks
NAB,
away.
the second biggest lobbyist group, is the NAB, National Association of Broadcasters? The number one source of revenue in TV is political campaign ads.
Exactly. So
That's the number one source of
they want
revenue.
you to feel that it's very close. Listen, it's not close. It's not close. The swing states are swinging our way. We're going to win this thing.
Yes.
Every time I've come to talk to you, a lot of you I've seen a few times, okay? I remember you. Every time I've come to talk to you, I have told you, don't worry, this is going to be all right. Don't ask, don't tell, it's going to be repealed. Don't worry, because I've got my ear to the ground. I'm telling you, we're going to win this thing. We are going to
How
win.
many of you think
And you have to
President Obama's
walk
gonna win the
around
election?
like you know that.
Who's winning? How many think Obama's going to win the election?
But it's going to be close.
And Tom thinks
It's
he's
going to be
not.
close.
It's not going to be close.
I would not say I don't think he's not. I
But
would
as
say
of today.
that I don't know. I'm very worried. Typically in an election, the candidate who spends the most money wins, and Obama's going to be outspent maybe as much as 2 to 1. That's damn scary stuff.
There was a recent study that came out of, I can't remember what university, they asked the race question. They tried to test for race, and their estimate was that Obama will lose 2 to 5% of the votes merely based on race.
So,
Just
But-
the
but
question
if
of
you-
like
race.
that in the South.
Relative from 08?
08, yes, relative to 08.
David, all I can say is, I feel your pain. I feel your pain. It's hard to get a word in, but I agree with everything that everybody has said here. But let me offer you 2 quick thoughts. Firstly, for 30 years now, the blame game, it's them versus us, has been working very effectively based on racism. Ron, I'm very sorry, but you know your dad was a part of that with the speech in Philadelphia,
I know.
Mississippi.
Yeah,
and
no.
Rush Limbaugh was a part of that because they peeled away what are known as the Reagan Democrats, which are the non-college educated, white male, blue collar, by saying it's that lazy, shiftless black person, we know what word we're all thinking of, who's sponging off of your taxes, and they've been able to split the party, the Democratic Party, by peeling off this big group. Another part is that a lot of people, Thomas Frank, what's the matter with Kansas? A lot of people don't rank the importance of political issues in the way that we do. They think that abortion is the most important issue. I can't tell you how many times I've heard some imbecile in the Midwest say, well, he's a good family man, and they vote based on some perception that some guy who's, you know, on the DC Madams list
please just
is.
say this, okay? Because it gets so sad when I listen to all this crap. And I just got to say, we're never going to win Mississippi, okay?
Exactly.
And we're
Right.
never going to win Alabama.
Right.
And we're
No,
never
we
going to
can.
win
The
West
demographics.
Virginia. So
Demographic.
forget about the racism, okay? Forget about it. For women, abortion is the most important issue. Thank you very much. You got a daughter. I got a daughter. It's important to me. But you
the
know
point-
what? We're never going to win.
The point that
the
I'm
South,
making,
okay?
Randy,
It's
not
gonna happen.
about the South.
Yeah.
It's out organizing
Exactly.
them. It's out hustling them. It's out voting them. It's making a clean system for voting, and it's taking over your state, and it's just outnumbering them. We have to acknowledge that there are people who are going to believe that having your guns and beating up on gays is more important than Wall Street bankers stealing all the money and making off to Swiss
Right,
banks.
and they
We
live
have
in
to acknowledge
Texas,
it.
and we're not going to win Texas, okay? I'm worried about
We
Florida.
will
We're getting
someday.
closer,
maybe
Texas.
We will
Pennsylvania.
someday.
In
Eventually, we might
2016,
get
we
that.
might.
But
Yeah.
here, hey, Randy,
Yeah.
here's the
2016
problem.
we
I
might.
think the problem is bigger. Tom, were you going to say something?
No.
I'm sorry. Ask the next question.
White hanky.
Okay, so we'll ask a quick question here. Try to get a few smaller ones here. This is from Jesse in Burien. Since America has become a war-making machine, why don't we start the draft back up? Anybody think we should start the draft back up?
Yes.
Anybody think it could happen?
No.
In our lifetime?
No.
No.
No, but I think it should, and not just because of war making, you know, because being in the military is a unique leadership opportunity. It is the most amazing thing to go through it, to learn liberalism. By that I mean you're only as good as the weakest among you, so that if somebody can't run 5 miles, the whole unit gets punished. Okay, so it's your job now to grab that person, or this one, who can't run the 5 miles and make sure that that person can. There's something unique about serving in the military. I'm not for war, but I certainly am for voluntary, military service for every single kid. Every kid, instead of doing meth, instead of, you know, running around, you know, dropping out of school and having no future, go join the military, okay? Go join the military. We need to encourage that as Democrats, and we don't, because all you think the military is for war. Well, what I think it's for is for peace, okay? When I was in, I wasn't in a war. We kept the peace. We did. We never had to go anywhere. So,
And the deal we should make with the American people around that is the one that most of the developed countries in the world do, who have conscription. Germany does, Israel does, a lot of these other countries do. It says, you give us a year time after high school,
Right, a year.
we'll give you a free college education.
that's, and you know, that was the deal.
But-
That was the deal. When I went in, I will say, I'm sorry. When I went in, 1979, I went in, there was a GI Bill. That's why I went in. I wasn't some great patriot. I make no bones about it. I did it because I was from a lower middle class family. And my father looked at me and my sister and he said, your sister is very pretty. She's not very smart. She's going to marry well. You're not so pretty and you're very smart. You better get a job. So I went to Fort Hamilton and I signed up for the military. I came home and I said to my mother, you'll never guess what I did today. And she goes, what? And I said, I joined the Air Force. Without missing a beat, she said, are you a lesbian or a hoa? So I looked at my sister, who was a lesbian, and I said, she's the lesbian, I must be the hoa. But I did it because they were going to put me through college, and my parents weren't. But when I got in, we changed presidents, and they did away with the GI Bill, so I never got to go to college. That is a good deal for our kids. It is something we ought to bring back, and we ought to make it mandatory for a year of their life.
Members
I,
of
I,
the McDermott tribe.
yeah, I would include some sort of other national service
Yeah.
in that thing. I think national service would probably be a good thing.
Yes,
But
Peace Corps, all kinds of things.
one of the problems with our military, though, and I don't know whether we should have a draft eventually or not, but right now we have a military empire, and that's best administered, the military knows, by professional military people.
Well, if everybody was a
And,
professional military
you don't get somebody in for
person-
2 years and put them in charge of Pakistan or something
Right,
like
but
that.
listen,
We
if
need a much
everybody
smaller military.
If
is what we
everybody
need.
here had
we spend
service,
It,
but if
I
everybody
get
here
service.
had-
I get service,
no,
and I agree with
military
you.
service. I'm going to be very specific with
Well,
you. I'm not going to parse. If everybody here had
Yeah, but I'm
military
not going.
service, you best believe they would have this relationship with the military.
But
that would
I'm
say
not going.
Where, right?
You-
no,
so you
no,
gotta
no,
give
what
me
I'm
another
saying-
option, 'cause
let me
I'm not
finish.
joining the military
Please,
for any
just
reason.
Let me finish.
Okay?
Just let me finish.
That's just, and are other people
Just
like
let
me?
me finish.
I am, but just so
Okay,
you
it's
understand.
like every developed country, a year of military service, and then those people who become familiar with what it takes to actually kill somebody, to actually hurt somebody, to actually escape somebody, to evade somebody, all that effort, they become very vocal about not using that power to do those things.
The only way to become familiar with
but
doing
when
those
people
things
aren't
is
familiar
to
with the
do
military, they
those
do
things.
fetishize it.
The
They
only
look at
way to
me
become
like,
familiar
"Oh my
with
God, you
those
served your
things is
country."
to do those things. And what I'm saying is we're doing too much of those
Yeah.
sorts of things.
I'm
We
not
need
talking
to do
about
less
going
of those
there.
things. We need to
I'm
stop.
talking
But
about-
I am going there
But
because
I'm
you're talking about the
okay,
military.
So when there's a flood, Ron. when
I
there's a
get that.
flood,
I get that the military has other good things, but you
The
know that the
National Guard's
military
gonna
is
show
part of
up,
an
okay?
empire,
I think-
and it is designed to kill people and break things.
I mean,
Yesterday,
there's,
I think
Yes,
everybody.
I know you were in the military, and I honor that
yesterday when
service,
that
but-
but
everybody
horrible
should-
shooting, yesterday when that horrible shooting happened,
Everybody should have to do talk radio for a year.
then you can talk over
I
anything.
think the bottom line is that the more transparency that we have in terms of the military, the better in terms of keeping us out of the business of killing people. With that said, I think you can also go into a civil service corps and learn many of these
Yes.
same
Yes.
these same
Yes.
attributes.
but I'm telling you,
Or a trust camp.
a what?
A trust camp.
A trust camp.
Yeah,
right.
we can all
We learn to
climb-
inherit money well.
That's right. Offshoring camp.
We're getting close to running out of time, and I want to ask each of you a question that was posed by Lauren Tazi of Seattle. And as I told you at the beginning, people look to you guys for all sorts of things. You know, there's wisdom and analysis, but also just kind of advice on where to go and what to do. So the question she had is, can you each give one suggestion for the audience members to take action on that would make a difference? So let's just close on this, and let's start with Tom, if we could.
One thing.
One thing that each person here could do that'll make a difference.
Show up at something, whether it's a Move On meeting, a Democracy for America meeting, a Progressive Democrats of America meeting, the local Democratic Party, the local Republican Party, if you're moderately inclined. They desperately need rational and sane people. The local Green Party. Just say, okay, 12 nights a year, one night a month, I'm going to spend some time doing something. Show up. Tag, you're it.
Yeah, is first of all to understand mainstream media is dead. Don't count on it.
Right.
And to understand you can replace that. And here's what I mean. Morris Dees, great civil rights lawyer, very dear friend of mine in Montgomery, Alabama, actually wrote it forward in the first book I ever wrote. And Morris said there's nothing that takes place in giant leaps. He said that we move ahead as a culture by small, separate events that take place. Now, think of yourselves, look around this room, and understand that each one of you has the possibility of creating that small, separate event. For example, he said Rosa Parks was important in the civil rights movement, but it didn't define the civil rights movement. It was 10 other events like that taking place in other parts of the country. Imagine if you replaced the dead or dying mainstream media by getting on and creating your own page, creating your own blog, getting out there. Just the people in this room. Just the people in this room. Who knows more than you do? You're here because you know. We're a handful of voices here. But if you go home today and you say, damn it, I know as much as the... God, we were talking about some of these shows on there. You go, really? You know, it looks like it looks like a boy band. It looks like, you don't know what the hell it is. So create something yourself. Create your own web page. Create your own blog. Get your message out there because you know more than everybody else. I'll say it for you because you may be too shy to say it. You know more than everybody else. If you want an impact, look around this room and understand when you walk out of here, if everybody started your own web page, your own blog, you will replace mainstream media and say, take a hike.
When you go home tonight or first thing tomorrow morning, if you're a little tired, have a little wine. Get a piece of paper, a nice, clean, long sheet of paper and a pen. Do it the old school style, no computer. Write down The names start at the bottom. Who is your local state representative that goes to the state capitol? In some states they're called state delegates, some state assembly members, state representative. Who is your local representative in the state House of Representatives? Then next line up, who is your state senator? Then start writing in, what election district am I in? What census tract am I in? Who is the local, what is the name of the county I live in? I'm not kidding, and I don't mean to sound patronizing. A lot of people, and I'm almost finished, write down the most basic things about the nuts and bolts of the politics in your community and in your county or your municipality and your state. Forget your member of the House, because I'll bet you know who that is, but if you want, throw in the member of the House. Forget the Senate, forget the President. Make sure you know who your local representatives are. Then take Thom Hartmann's advice.
Thom Hartmann's advice is the best advice that you will ever get. It is the simplest, best, most effective thing is to show up at these precinct meetings, these Democratic meetings. Go to a Republican meeting, for God's sake. So that's his, mine would be, and this is really simple, believe it or not, go to Obama.com and buy yourself a bumper sticker, give $5, whatever, $5. Get the bumper sticker, stick it on your car. Whenever anybody, I don't care if they're a progressive, a liberal, a Republican, a Tea Partier, I don't care what they are, when they challenge you and they say, well, I don't think he's done enough, just say, we're going to win. So you better get used to it. And be happy about it and freak them the f out.
I don't think I can top the advice you've gotten here, so let me go just a little bit process. Someone once told me to do this in college, and I've done it. I've tried to do it every day since then, and that was a long time ago, and I skipped a lot of days. But basically, just every day, once you've written up that paper that Norman suggests that you write up, I think every day you wake up and you just say, I'm going to do one thing, no matter how insignificant it is, that is going to in some way promote that agenda. It could be just leave a blog comment. It could be, I don't know, it doesn't matter. If you put yourself on a regiment where I'm going to do one thing, no matter how tiny it is, as long as it in some way is in service of that agenda, I think good things can happen.
The fact that you guys are here suggests that you've pretty much already taken Tom's advice. You care, you think, you show up, and you vote. That's my read on you folks here. So you probably don't need a lot of advice about showing up and casting a ballot and all that kind of thing. But remember, when you're doing all of that, and by the way, the advice to show up at a Republican meeting every once in a while, that's actually very smart.
Oh, yeah.
Take your talking points, take your facts, and bring them to a Republican meeting so that when they start talking about, what Obama said or he's a communist, you can go, excuse me, wait a minute, facts here, just want to bring a... But beyond that...
Pack heat.
Pack heat, yeah, there's that.
Pack heat.
Yeah, they'll like that. They'll trust you then. He's got a gun, he must be okay. Yeah. Woo! Okay. But beyond that, understand that we're in the fight of our life here in this country right now. And there's going to be winners and there's going to be losers. It can be the tiny sliver of the populace winning that is represented by people like Mitt Romney. They might be the winners. Or it could be the 99% of people that end up as the winners. But just as life now isn't like it was 20 years ago in the United States, it's not going to be like it is now 20 years from now either. And how it changes is going to be determined in just the next few years. We're going to determine what sort of court we're going to have for a long time. We're going to determine whether we continue heating the planet and whether New York is going to end up underwater in 2100, as the recent projections say. Take that, Chase Manhattan. How much do you think that's going to cost?
Not a bad idea.
Right? We're going to decide whether we're going to continue to spend nearly $1 trillion a year on our military empire. All these things are going to be decided. What sort of health care plan we really have. Are we moving towards health care as a right or health care as a privilege for the few? So understand when you do all these things, caring and showing up and voting on all that thing, that you're doing it for a reason, and these are desperate times. We are in a fight for our lives here in this country.
All right, on that, we're going to end it. Thank you all very much for coming. Thanks for all the great questions. Thank you, our
On fire.
Coming out.
you.
Thank you all for
Thank
coming out
you.
tonight. Our talent will be out in the lobby to do some autographs. We don't have time for pose photos, so if you could just move through the line, meet everybody, get an autograph, that'd be great. We also have winners from the drawing.